All right. So, hello, everyone, again, and welcome to our February live event with Runway Recovery in California. And I'm your T.A.M hostess, Terry. And tonight we're joined by Trista James, the mom of Noah Ames. He's the runway operations manager, and you might recall that Noah sat back with us in December and he shared his story. So, tonight we're going to hear from his mom and gain some insight into how all that looked from her side of the fence, and Trista will share some of what she has dealt with emotionally, as well as some of the ways she coped. So, welcome, Trista. And we're so happy to have you with us. And if you're ready to begin, we'll jump right in with a question for you.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay. So, Trista, as a fellow addict's mom, we all understand how tumultuous and how chaotic this life can be, and certainly understand stories that are familiar or, very similar to ours. So, the question is, at what point did you have the realization that Noah was truly addicted and like no doubt that he was in fact struggling? So, what was that stage light that came on for you and how it became reality when you knew for sure that he was struggling?
Um, I would say, of course, as moms, we can be in denial for a long time. There are a lot of signs leading up to it. Me, as a mom going through his room, finding empty bottles of all kinds, pill bottles, liquor bottles, and then gradually we saw his decline in high school. He was like one of the states, Hawaii State's best swimmer in the top five, and then gradually he stopped going to swimming and he stopped going to school, and so that was like the inside of like something's going on serious. And then we found an alternative high school. It was actually an online charter school, and we were able to like push him through. He definitely had some differences in learning too. So we got him to graduate high school. Coming out of high school, my husband's a general contractor, so he started working for my husband, and he's a great craftsman. And so Noah learned quickly how to do super high end finish work and like multi-million dollar homes. And so um, when I think I never had like a huge real like there are certain things leading up to it. He got a DUI underage when he was living at home, and then that was like an eye opener. And he got his driver's license taken away, and so he was at home for a long time. And then I would say, like, once he started working for my husband, like we started seeing like he met a girl, they started living together, and there was a lot of isolation. And so me and my husband started talking about it, and we're like, we think he needs to go somewhere. That was like the realization of like, because we live in Hawaii and there's no like quality rehabilitation centers here. So we did our research and we found Treehouse. And so we're like in contact with Treehouse, and we're waiting for him to come to us saying like, hey, like I'm ready. He had lots of bottoms, but finally he came to his father and said, I need help. And so we're like, okay, we got the place for you. We know where
There
you're
you
going.
go.
Here you go. And so he
So
went through tree.
you notice little things on and off, like as they graduated, right? You started to see the pill bottles and him
Yes, pill
isolating,
bottles.
and so
And
that was kind of your no. Okay.
yeah, and he and the DUI, and he definitely had his conflict with the law. And so um and then we just knew like he didn't have that sparkle in his eye anymore and like the joy of life. It was like it was gone, and he was like 19 years old. We're like, what's going on? And so um yeah, so we're like, if he's going to do this, we want to find the best possible fit for him, and we found that Treehouse was probably that fit.
That
um
was your place. Well,
yeah, and
you
yes.
may have kind of stepped into this question, so I want to go ahead and ask it.
Okay.
Because like you mentioned, once we get out of that denial, so when you realized that you were stepping out of denial, um, and you faced that reality, what was your very next step? Was that to give him an option to go to treatment?
I think, I mean, he was an adult at this time and he wasn't living in the house. So it was kind of, we did like let him know, like, hey, we're here for you. Like, whatever you're going through, if you need help, like, um, Noah was, no, and still is very private, and he never ever talked about any of his feelings or any of his relationships. So he was definitely very difficult to communicate with, like even as a small child. And so that was kind of um, a hard thing. And as parents too, we're just like so codependent, and him working for his father was just like we'd give him, chances after chances. And I think finally when we're like, when he came to us and was like, I need help, that's when we're like, okay, this is what you need, and this is where you can go. And that's when we showed him, this is where you're going. You're leaving Hawaii and you're going to go live there for 6 months. And
Take the
so,
step.
yeah,
Right.
and he was ready.
Right. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
So when you think back to when he was in active addiction, like probably at his worst or his lowest that you ever saw, what was
Hmm.
the hardest thing as a mom that you had to take a stand on? If you could think back now, what was the hardest thing that you had to do as a mom, knowing that he's struggling? Was it a boundary? What was that for you?
Um, I mean, always in the back of my mind, because he was an adult, I thought he could, like, he wouldn't really come around us once he was an adult because he was living with his girlfriend. So he'd work during the day and probably isolate and then go and use. And so we didn't see much of it. But as like, I never saw it. I never saw him consume it, which was so interesting. He hid it so well. And there were a few times where I was like he's not in his right mind because he was combining drugs and alcohol. I would say like my biggest concern innately in me was if he hurt someone else and himself.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's always something that's hard to think about.
Yeah.
So, when you realize that the severity of Noah's addiction, and he made that decision, well, but even before he made the decision to go to Treehouse, and even after now for you, I know he's in recovery, but how did you retain your personal strength and your own personal recovery to get through this? So, what worked for you?
Um, I think, okay, I'm just gonna kind of go like farther from the story a little bit, because I think actually, because after Treehouse, he came home and he relapsed, and so then we got Jacob and Mario involved,
Hmm.
and that was the first time I think I really got like clear boundaries going on with him, because they were like, if he comes back, he's never gonna live in your house again. Like he's never going to work for he's never going to work for his father. Like this is what's going on. And so it like I think finally as me and my husband were like codependent through it all, just like I mean, you almost put blinders on even, as he went through recovery and then came back and we're just like, "Oh my goodness, you relapsed." And he's like in our house and it was like my daughter was graduating that day from high school. We had all family in Hawaii. It was like and and that was when I think it was finally like he's never coming back here. Like and he's going to have to do it on his own. And that was like a clear awakening moment for me as his mother and as like putting clear boundaries down for him.
Right.
And yeah.
And that does kind of lead us into the next question that I had for you. Was that the hardest boundary that you had during his addiction?
Um I it's always been very difficult with him. And still I've had a hard time communicating with him. It's like me and him are almost too much alike. And then so when we get together, we're just like, ah. And so it's hard with the boundaries with him still. Like, I totally understand. But now as an adult, I've learned to just like breathe or remove myself at certain times so I don't get upset. I've learned different ways because I mean, he's 25 now. So
Hmm.
I've learned different ways of dealing with things so I don't get so escalated and it doesn't upset me.
Right.
Um, yeah.
But did you have a firm boundary when he was using that, say for instance, I know one of mine would be no drugs in my home, period, the end. That's it. There's no debate. Did you have something similar to that when he was active?
We didn't because it was so well hidden. Like I would never see him drinking or like I did I'd see bottles and stuff in his room, but nothing crazy, like nothing like um and we I think when he right at the end before he asked for help, we didn't see to the extent of where he was in his addiction. Um, I think the boundaries we did have were certain things were so so ultimately one night he crashed his car and he came up and brought it up to us because we live on a property and he was freaked out and we're like, oh my god, you just crashed your car, like. And he was scared because obviously he was drinking or on drugs, so he left the scene. And then um and he left his car there for us to deal with. And finally we're like, this like my husband was like, this isn't your car anymore. This is our car. You left it here. You made a bad choice. So there were certain things I feel like he did that we had consequences for the
Right.
choices he made. Yes.
Right. Right. Okay. So when he was actively using, and I know you said that um, he hid it very well, of course, but
Yeah.
you knew, right? And because you know or knew,
Yes.
inside your head there's a lot of stuff going on. You're
Yeah.
physically it tends to make me sick, when I
Yes.
think about it.
Yeah.
So when he was, in active addiction, what did you do to bring yourself out of that, to be able to deal with it, to cope with it, to help yourself? Was there something that worked for
I
you?
um I think me and my husband have really active lifestyles. We live in Hawaii, so we surf and we hike and we garden and we're in nature. So luckily, I think definitely my escape was through like being like doing things in the earth, like being in the ocean or like finding things that I did that where, when you're doing certain things, you don't think about paying your bills or like
Right.
all these things that you're struggling with. It was, it was, um, super hard with him because it created a lot of fights in our family growing up. Like every night we were fighting with him. And so I felt what was hardest was like his sister saw all of this and she
Hmm.
would, and so my like innately in my motherly heart was just like, I'm so sad that this is causing so much harm and sadness to everyone in our family.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so thinking back, still while he is active, and we're so glad he's where he's at. The operations manager for Runway is phenomenal. But if you had to think back, and if you had an opportunity for a do-over in any situation when he was active, what would that be?
Um, I can't say I would have changed. Like, of course, you want to try to change things and dwell and think about, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that. But ultimately, it was the power in him and the power of God that got him to that point and where he is today. And
Right.
so I think through all that, like if I went back and tried to change something, maybe it would have never gotten him to that point to ask for help.
Right.
So,
Right.
and I mean, not saying, all of us have struggled as parents, raising our children. And so it's like, I'm not saying, hey, I was 100%
Yeah.
mom, you know? So, and so just through that, I think, like, but looking back on it now, he always knew he could come to us at any time. We would support him.
Right. Right. That's very important too. Okay, so guys, with that, that's the end of my question. So, what I'd like to do is take a few questions. So, if anybody in the group tonight has a question for Lisa, we'll take a few while we still have some time. Does anybody have a question? You could type it into chat and then we'll take them that way. Sue has a question. While she's typing, here's another question for you. When
Yeah.
this was going up, Lisa, and you said it affected, his sister was there and anything, how did you shield his sister during all of this?
Um, we didn't. She's 6 years younger, and they're actually really, really close, him and his sister, and they still are. So she's down going to school at Point Loma Nazarene. So they're actually both in California right now.
Mhm.
And she just turned 21 on Monday, so they spent the day together, which was really sweet. Um, my she's an Aquarius, so she's very like goes with the flow and loved all of us and was just, she definitely saw the harm that was being done and the
Right,
pain. And so, um, it was just a dysfunctional family going on. So there was nothing to really,
right, right.
yeah.
Okay. And they were close enough in age, so okay.
Yeah.
So Sue says I stole her first question. I'm sorry, Sue. We're on the same wavelength. She says, how long from the time you noticed his using was an issue until he chose recovery?
I would say about 4 years. Um, like as addicts progress, I think that ultimately they have a point of hopefully awakening before
Hmm.
something really dramatically happens to them or someone else. Um, so he hit it really good because he had girlfriends he lived with, and um, they just thought he was going through some type of depression and was like, he needs to talk to someone. And so I think his thing was extreme, hiding it very well.
Right, right,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, any other questions from the group?
I have a
Anybody?
question for Ruthie.
Uh-huh.
Um, Once he was in recovery, did you still struggle with enabling him?
Of course. Of course I did because we're moms and you build that like codependent relationship that's just not healthy at all. And you don't really realize it till I started doing the meetings with Karen Wilcox. We did the parent, so she would meet with the parents with the young men that were going through Treehouse, and we did parent meetings with her, and she taught a lot of coping skills of breathing, of stop, of removing yourself, of certain things of how to deal with, because just because they go through recovery and get healthy doesn't mean they're going to come back and everything's going to be rosy. It can
Hmm.
be really extremely uncomfortable and painful. Um, and it's still there. I'm so happy where he's at, but there's still visual things in my house that I look at that he's damaged through the years of,
Yeah.
um, and I look at it and it's almost like when you get scarred from when you hurt yourself, that
Hmm.
that scar is always going to be there and you're going to remember that pain. Um, and so there'll always be those moments of like pain that you feel or like you in certain situations. So and learning how to be a mother and adult relationship is we're still working on it, we're an ocean away and he's
Absolutely.
still working on it too. So
Of course. I
yeah.
know for me, it's I use forks as much as possible and no spoons if I can get away with it. So, okay, so last question here for you, Trista. Okay, so Kim asks, so was the first rehab one and done? Was that it for him? She said her son went to two inpatient and two outpatient. So was it just
He
one for Noah?
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys know about Treehouse. It's a 6-month live-in treatment center out of Costa Mesa, and it's for young men. And the philosophy, their philosophy of rehabilitation is really amazing. It's actually like rehabilitating the frontal lobe of your brain, and they live in teams as men in houses, and then they go through a treatment basically from like 4:30 in the morning till 7:30 at night.
Hmm.
And they work on everything social, emotional, cognitive, physical. And so we knew that it just shows the longevity through a rehab is um, proven to hopefully last longer results. So we're like, and it's super expensive. We all know this because we're um, addicts moms. And so that was really hard for us. And we're like, we'll figure it out. You're just going to figure it out. You can't put money on a life. It was like, you can't put a dollar sign, like, I only have 100,000 to put on you. It's like, like as a parent, you're like, I'll do, if this is gonna save your life, I'm willing to like go sell my kidney, not literally, but and that's probably codependent in himself. I'm sorry.
Right, right.
Just
We
like
get it.
going through it still though. And I'm so happy to see where he's at now. And and I'm so proud of him. It's like
Yeah,
through
of
it.
course. We
Yeah.
absolutely love Noah, and what he's doing with Runway is just amazing. And, he was a blessing to listen to. And now we got to meet you, and that was
Thank
phenomenal.
you.
So, with that, I just want to say thank you, Trista. We appreciate you giving us your time. And we're just glad you were able to make it here with us tonight. It means a lot to us to learn and listen, and we're just always gathering things for our arsenal. So, we
Yes.
appreciate you so much.
Thank you for having me. I just want to say that it's super sad, and sometimes you don't feel a lot of hope when you're in it, but I don't want to cry.
I
But there's
know, I know.
hope.
We understand. We do understand, Trista. Thank you so very much.